This is group 7 for ALTC805VD, Delisa Collins, Cade Albert, Eric Castle, and Danielle Alley. And what we chose to do for our presentation is each of us took an article or some videos, and as we were reading and watching, we pulled out some information that we felt was most important and how we could relate it. And that is what we're going to share with our group today. So for starters, I had the practicing what we teach article, and one of the concepts that really stood out to me the most in this was content presentation, and that students who have been through a traumatic experience, sometimes course content can have the potential to re-traumatize the students. And I think that that's something that sometimes we can forget about. I had a situation my first year teaching when I taught English. We were reading the story Night, and we were doing a cover analysis. So we were just looking at the front cover, looking at the back cover, and on the back cover there was a picture of a guy being hung. And I had a student come up to me a couple days later, and she told me that her dad had hung herself just a couple weeks prior, and that had brought back memories. And I was really frustrated because I did not know the situation and I was not informed of the situation. So I went to the counselor and got it all figured out. But that was something as simple as just looking at that book cover traumatized her. And so we literally tore that book apart so she never had to look at that cover again. And so different things that they said to kind of help combat that is to develop those warnings and know that, if it is something that could potentially re-traumatize someone, to always give those warnings, and then those verbal check-ins and discussing it and just being open with it. And one of the points that they said was allowing students not to participate demonstrates respect, that you respect them and you're also kind of letting them take responsibility for their own actions. And so that really stood out to me, especially being that I teach high school, that letting those kids make those decisions for them. So have any of you guys had an experience or a situation similar to that?
I haven't, but I can't imagine what you had to go through learning that a student actually went through hanging. That'd make me sick to my stomach, so I couldn't imagine what you were thinking in that situation.
It was definitely.
I've had a student who, so my job prior to this was a juvenile probation officer, and we're in a small community, and I ended up having both of her perpetrators on my probation caseload. And so when I came to school, I knew kind of what her history was, and so that's been very interesting to me because I run into that confidentiality thing too, where I know she's been traumatized and victimized, and I can't share a whole lot of that with teachers, but there have definitely been things during her school days that trigger her, and so she ends up in here talking to me, so I can kind of relate to that a little bit.
This past year, we went to Kansas City for a farm show. I took all my FFA chapter up there. I've got a student who was in foster home, or was a foster child, and we went to eat lunch that day. I had a parent willing to buy lunch for everybody. I said, well, we'll go and eat at the Pizza Street in Kansas City. Big buffet, feed lots of us. The kid's been great all year. All of a sudden, he had just broke down on me. He's like, I'm not eating. We're not going there. I'm not hungry. It's like, dude, you've been telling me all day you're hungry. Let's go eat. He says, I can't. I will not eat there. And it's like, all right. He never would tell me what was going on. And there's a Burger King there. And I took our para with us that works with them. And they went over and ate at the Burger King next door. And the para found out when he got pulled away from his parents, that is where they went and his officers went and ate lunch with him. I mean, who would have ever imagined, out of all the places in Kansas City, that is where we'd go eat lunch?
I think that really says a lot because it is something that you just never know. And I think that that's something that I've learned just really researching the trauma more, is just that whole idea that our students are traumatized and we don't necessarily know that. And that's just something that it's kind of hard to accept. To be honest, for me, it's kind of hard just to let that settle in and accept that.
Yeah, it's very hard to. I mean, just the things I see in our little community I'm in. I mean, there's something every day different going on. It's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Eric, while you're on the screen, do you want to share with us what you read and
Sure. So, kind of like you were going over, Delisa, mine's was a crash course on trauma informed teaching. Um, some of the 5 things that it was talking about to understand about trauma. Trauma is real, it happens every day. We may not know what's going on with our students. Something could be going on at home. We just need to make sure that we're there for them. We can help them find out what is being, what's going on. It's toxic to the students. This year I had a student who last year never acted out, was great. This year, complete 180 of where he was last year. I mean, he's just acting out and trying to be a gangster this year, where last year the most polite kid I ever had. So that was one thing, that something happened over the summer, and like I told him, I know something happened. Just I don't need to know what happened. Just if you ever need to, you can visit with me about it. We try to keep everything just there in the ag shop. And one of the things that we just need to make sure that we're giving them a positive environment and that they can grow and learn and succeed at what they do. I had another student a year ago who, with us being an FFA, we're always going to contests. Well, when I first met her last year, she's a quiet person, but then she's the one who succeeded the most out of me for all of our speech contests. We broke her out of her shell, and her parents thank me every day for that, because she was one that had some trauma growing up and didn't really get along with anybody, and now she's one of the best students we have in the FFA program. Our students are always in a survival mode between fight, flight, or freeze. That's one thing I see all the time. I don't know. Do you guys see that, Cade, with your sports teams?
Yeah, for sure. Just seeing the kids from the classroom in sports and seeing how differently, sports a lot of times for those kids is a getaway. So they act quite a bit differently from the classroom and when we get on the field of play. So yeah, I see it every day as well.
Yeah. Do you two see anything there in your schools that you deal with?
I have a much larger school, and so when we had our first meeting, I talked a little bit that, my situation is so much more different that it's just kind of, I am like my own little situation out there because I see a lot of it. And I was having the conversation with a teacher earlier today that I wish I knew where some of my students were, being that we have almost 2,000 kids, even though it is something, that those kids are still there. I'm going to have those kids once, and then I'm not going to see them again until they're walking across that stage graduating. And what brought it up was I was on my plane period walking around in the hall, and one of my best students was being escorted out by 2 police officers. And it was just like, what happened? And I found out later, this whole situation, but it was just, wow, I can't believe that would have ever happened to that person. And so it was just really hard to take in. And I think it's something that, it happens every day. And it's something that we just, again, even as hard as it is, we kind of have to accept that.
Yeah. I had a kiddo today who was in trouble for keeping his hood up. And so I met him in the hallway as he was coming out of the principal's office and asked him how he was doing. And he said, well, I just got done talking to. And I said, oh, yeah, about your hoodie, right? And he said, yeah, but Mrs. Athley, I do that because when I get into open spaces with a lot of people, I get very anxious. And so then, of course, it opened up a conversation about how he's doing that so that people don't look at him. He's not doing it because he's trying to break the rules. He's doing it because that's an escape for him. So.
And that was, you bring up a good point there. Danielle, that actually was brought up in this reading about how, you know, one of the college professors sees students wearing shorts and hoodies all the time in the middle of the summer. It's like that's how they regulate their body and their emotions. So that was interesting that you brought that up. Um, Another thing it was talking about is don't take on the burden of trying to fix the trauma for the kids. You know, be there, be present, and emotionally available for the students. And that's one thing all my FFA kids know is that they can come to me at any time, and I will be there and listen to them whenever. And I've got my office. We shut the door, and we've been there and done that for a lot of the kids over the past year and a half now. So my kids know that they can always come to me. So
That's awesome. That's really great. I'm going to kind of chime in on, am I showing up on your guys' screen when I talk?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. On my screen, I'm like not showing up at all. And so I wanted to make sure you guys could still hear me and it was showing up okay. So,
Yeah.
okay. Awesome.
If you don't mind, I want to kind of piggyback off of Eric. If
Yeah.
you're done with your
Yeah,
reading,
roll right ahead.
it kind of leads straight into mine, which was more than a safe space, which was talking about creating that safe space for your students.
Yeah.
This article was more specifically geared to like the LGBTQ community and making sure that those kids know that they're safe in classrooms. They talked about how in some classrooms they post rainbow sticky notes outside their doors so they know that it's a designated safe place. And I also this talked about how students need to have their basic needs met. So like there's a hierarchy of needs. I'm sure you guys have all heard about it, but this talked about how we have to meet those needs first before we can get them to learn anything like math or science or reading or whatever it is we're expecting them to do. So if they don't feel safe, they're not going to even make those connections in your class. And then it just kind of talked about some other things that schools were doing in Massachusetts. There's a teacher who is shifting her literature class to a LGBTQ literature class instead of like American literature. And so she has tied it into like using LGBTQ readings or authors or whatever instead of the actual American lit content. Her board approved it. Her superiors are liking it. Anyways, and then it talked about a counselor in Georgia who is doing the same thing. He's also a member of the LGBTQ community, so he feels like it makes it safer for his students to know that they can talk to him openly about that. But he also says in there that we are starting to recognize more of a link between our social and emotional well-being and our academic performance, which again I think is spot on regardless of whether you're talking about LGBTQ or you're talking about, you know, in my district we don't have a lot of that. We have more of the divorced parents or the foster families or things of that nature. And so that's what that article talked about. But I also kind of wanted to share that I found an article this week that talks about the same lady who was in our video, Dr. Nadine Burke Harris, and she is really pushing for every student in California to have an ACE given to them to screen for childhood trauma, because again, she links it to like kids who are coming into counselors' offices with tummy aches, or she says a lot of them with ADHD. Doctors are saying they have ADHD, but those medical conditions are being linked. Some of these are being linked straight to the childhood trauma that these kids are going through. It talks about a boy who had recurring abdominal pain and kept going to doctors and nobody could figure it out, but then somebody administered an ACE and he had a 6 out of 10, and so then they were able to coordinate his care without medicine and without doctors, but in things like sleep, exercise, nutrition, mindfulness, nourishment, things like that. So again, going back to that hierarchy of needs, we have to make sure that our kids' needs are met before we can get anything productive out of them in our classrooms. So
I think that you have a lot of really great points in there, especially, I mean, even just just the whole idea that our students have to feel welcomed and they have to feel like they're safe to be there before that learning can even take place. Our district just recently, or our school just did an expansion on our building. So we essentially doubled in size. And in this new part of the building, we have single stall bathrooms. And so it is something that they are not labeled. And it's just, that has helped a lot of our students feel more accepted. We had a lot of issues where it was, with the LGBT, it was, what bathroom do they use? And we had students that some days they would use the male and some days they would use the female, and that was concerning to other parents. And so creating those separate stall bathrooms is something that made everybody feel more welcome. And it's really helped with even the other students feel more accepting of it, because it's like, okay, it's really just raised a lot of awareness in general, and we're working towards having more restrooms throughout the building instead of just on that one part of the school, because it is, we kind of joke that you got to pack a water bottle and a granola bar to hike over there because it's so far away. But it is something that, something as simple as that can help those students feel more welcomed in the building overall.
I just want to ask him, Cade, like on the sports side of things, how are you seeing like people who are saying they're female, or guys saying they're female, or females playing on the football teams? Like at our school, we've got two girls, one on the middle school and high school, that are both on the football team, and great for them. They're doing wonderful, but the guys are like, I don't want to be playing with a girl on the team. And then when you watch the games, they really don't want to tackle the girls. So it's kind of nice when you get toward the end, you can score a touchdown pretty quick. But later in the game, they're like, all right, we're going to start hitting her because we're getting points. But I don't know. I just see that working somewhat as an advantage, but also a disadvantage.
Right. You look at the professional sports, and a lot of the gay athletes that are coming out, their teammates are saying, "Look, we don't care what you are. Don't make it a focal point. A lot of times, if you're good, we can forgive a lot." I think the world's kind of coming around. It's still at the younger level, at the high school, middle school, and below. It's still, you can tell kids are timid if they're different than their teammates.
Yeah.
Out here in small town Western Kansas, I don't see any of it. I'm sure, like you said, you've seen a little bit of it at the big schools. I know it's there 100%. But I think, honestly, at the end of the day, if a kid is not bringing attention to his or herself, and if they're doing everything for the team and for the right reason, there really shouldn't be an issue, you would think. But it's out there, and people are just going to have to accept it, honestly.
Yeah. Like our middle school girl, I had to run the clock the other night for the game. She's tougher than all the boys on the team. So, she's going to be a high school student next year. It's like, do you allow her to play, or are you afraid because she's so small, she's going to get hurt? So, I don't know.
So do you guys have any ways that you can implement those types of strategies to help the LGBT community, like in your classroom, feel more accepted? Do you guys have any like strategies that you are able to implement for that reason, or even like as a counselor, Danielle?
Well, I don't believe that we have any students in our district that identify, and
Okay.
so it hasn't really been a focal point in our district. However, it probably needs to be approached at some point, just because the world is changing, and we need to make sure all of our students feel safe. And so that's probably something that my district could do better at this point, is just maybe coming up with policies to relate to that.
I know the school where I'm teaching, we're a really small town, and surprisingly, we have had a lot of members in the community came out, and a few of our students have came out. One of my officers has came out, and like I told him, I'm happy for him, and I support him in everything they do. Just don't bring any attention more than is needed. to us during the class times, right? So, but our school, as far as district wise, I don't think they have anything set in place, but it is prevalent in our district. So,
It's not really prevalent. I'm kind of like you guys. We're typical small town America. We do have a couple that have come out or whatever, but our district really hasn't focused on it. Our kids, from what we can see, our kids are pretty decent at being accepting. You're always going to have the, I don't know what you want to call it. You're always going to have the backlash or the behind the scenes stuff, but it really isn't a focus in our district either.
I think for me, it's more of fostering a safe environment for all students, no matter what it is, not LGBTQ or whatever, not labeling students, but just fostering a safe environment for everybody. So, like in my office, I have a space in the corner over here that has, a chair and a rug, and it looks homey. And, kids can come in here and feel like they can take their shoes off, they can sit on the floor, they can do whatever they want, as long as they feel safe in here. For me, it's just, getting all of your teachers in your district to buy into providing that safe space in the classroom, so where kids aren't terrified to ask you to go to the bathroom, or what I mean.
I think that's really great. Just that whole idea of, letting the students know that they're welcome here and that they can come here, and it can be even just that they need someplace to feel safe, or that they need someone to talk to, and knowing that you're always there and you're always willing, whether it be during class time, during past period, during lunch, before school, after school, whatever it may be, that, always having that open door, that they're welcome to come in whenever you need them. So, all right, Cade, would you like to finish us off? Tell us about the videos that you had.
Sure. So a lot of the videos kind of touch on everything we talked about, but the first thing I want to go over, and I know we went over it last week, is the ACE scores. And a lot of times teachers, and the gal touched on this in the video too, a lot of times the teachers and parents, all that stuff, people can figure out ACE scores pretty easily without seeing the facts. If your family's divorced, or if there was a suicide in the family or a death, things like that, people can add up ACE scores really easily. But the thing is, if you do have a high ACE score, a lot of times the kids won't open up, and like we've been saying, those are usually your troubled kids. So basically, she was talking about how every single kid with a high ACE score needs to be somehow, some way, you need to crack the code. Whether it's talking to them after class, or showing them you care, putting your arm around their shoulder, or in my case, if I coach them in a sports and I see them with their barrier down, maybe that could be a way. But each student, even if they don't have a high ACE score, just finding some way to connect with each student. I think in the small schools that's a little bit easier to do, rather than being in a school with, I don't know, however many Dodge has, like 1,600, something like that. But it's definitely easier for me to do that rather than being in Dodge or Garden or something. So the ACE score, it's important to be able to put your arm around kids. And then the next thing is, let me see here. I have all my notes here. What is, I guess, something that, because this is something I struggle with. I was never really raised to, share feelings and that kind of stuff. What is something that has helped you all with maybe opening up barriers with kids that do have high ACE scores, or maybe you're quote unquote troublemakers? Is there something that works for you all?
Well, like you were talking about, Cade, open up with them, be there for them. Like you said, I'm at a very small school too. We got like 50 some kids total in the high school. So I'm at a contest, it seems like every week with them. So I spend a lot of time on the road with them. So you really get to know them. You learn what's bothering them over time. You can tell if something's going on or not. Yeah. Like I had, like I was talking about earlier, that my one student, last year he's amazing. Like this year, there's something going on, but he won't open up about it. But it's like, just have the door open for him and always allow him to come in and visit with you. Right.
I think for me, it's finding a connection outside of school, or allowing kids sometimes to see that you're a human too, and not just a counselor or a teacher. Last year, I had a student who was really angry, and I spent the whole year trying to work with him. And it wasn't until I started asking questions about, tell me who your grandpa is again. And then he told me, and I said, I finally made the connection with, hey man, your uncle was in my class. I know your grandpa. And so then from that point on, he opened up and was willing to talk to me. So I think with those kids that are really tough, or, going through some stuff at home, you have to find a way to try to connect to them outside of school, or build that relationship. And then once they trust you, once the safe space is established, then they can start sharing some of that burdensome stuff with you.
That's good. That makes sense. Basically, it was just going into the relationships, and the one gal talked about how one teacher in particular was able to break down the barrier. I can't remember what it was, but I mean, it's just the little things. Like for me as a young teacher coming into it, it's funny how the littlest thing that could come off to you, like maybe I helped get a student a pencil, something really little, but it just so happens to be life changing for them. Like that's the first time someone has reached out and offered me something, so that this video to me helped confirm like the little things do matter to kids, and a lot of times it's the kids that need the help the most that the little things help, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the video wrapped up. A lot of times the video talked about everything we talked about. It just wrapped it up, and the A scores.
I think one thing that, like a recent experience that I have is I have a student who is in my first block and they're late every single day. And it's not just a couple minutes late, but it's 30 or 45 minutes late. And, they're only there for half the class, and we have a very strict tardy policy. And so she was constantly getting detentions and detentions and detentions. And it was like, okay, well, and I just talked to her one day and I said, hey, do you want to come in after school and serve your detention with me? And she's like, oh, I could do that. So I had her come in, and usually I have the kids like clean my desk or something, and have them do something like that to kind of make up for it. And I just sat down and I started talking to her, and we just started talking. And since that day, for the last couple weeks, she comes in my room every day after school, and for 30 minutes we color together. And it sounds so elementary and so ridiculous, but to her, like that 30 minutes while she's waiting on her ride, we are sitting there coloring, having conversation. And tomorrow's my last day with her in my class. And I'm just kind of like, is she going to keep coming in? Like I just kind of wonder. But it really relates to something else that was in my article that talked about self-care. And we have to take care of ourselves just as much as we have to tell our students to take care of them. And for me, coloring is also, that helps me relax. And as much as some days I really hate sitting there for 30 minutes knowing that I could be working or I could be doing this, like it's really great for myself as well, just to sit down for 30 minutes at the end of the day and color and have this conversation with the student that I don't know what she's going through, but I know that I'm making a difference for her.
Yeah, a lot of times it's in the words.
Eric, go ahead.
That's just flat out amazing how you're dealing with that. You'll be an impactful teacher probably for her. What grade is she in?
Sophomore.
Yeah, so that'll be awesome if you can keep her and she can keep coming back to you every year.
I hope so.
You're making a difference.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I found too that just sometimes in the simple words that you say, like, hey, Grace, you look pretty today, or Grace, I really like your hair today, or something like that, just kind words from us goes a long way too.
Yeah.
Consistent kind words, I guess. But
absolutely. Do you guys have any other, I have no idea where we're at on our time. I did not keep track like I thought I was going to. But do you guys have any other comments or anything else you guys want to add before we close it off? You guys good? Okay. I will turn this into YouTube tonight and get the link posted. And then here in a couple weeks, I'll reach out to everyone for our second project that we get to do together. So,
very good.
All right, sounds good. You guys all have a great night.
You too.
so I was like, keep busy. So she kept getting detention, and I finally just told her one day, and I said, hey, you want to come in and talk? Well, I told you we just sit there and talk. I told you about this girl. Well, we started coloring together. And so, because she would color, and then one day she just asked me, she's like, will you color with me? So, like today after school, I literally just sat there for 30 minutes and colored with her. And we just talked, and so I was telling them about that, and it's like, to her, like, that probably, to me, like, oh, I'm just sitting here coloring, but for her, like, she keeps coming into my room for something, and it's she's not asking me for anything. Today she asked me for a piece of paper, but it's like, there's that connection that's there that, so. Tomorrow's my last day with her, and I don't know if she's gonna keep coming back. She wants to try to get. She's trying to get in some of my other classes. I actually need to check and see what she was saying. She was trying to get in some others. Hey, Coach, I have a question about this update and something that changed. So on my Skyward, I have to do my login, and that's it, sign in, that's normal. But I have to keep hitting retry, and before it just automatically went through it. Is there a way to turn that off? Because I've never had to click it on my iPad before. You know what I mean?